Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Silmarillion Film Project. I am Corey Olson, the Tolkien professor. Dave Kale is running a little late here this evening, but we're hoping he can join us later. But meanwhile, we are joined not only by Marie Prosser, one of our normal head writers here, who so often helps by joining us, but also by a special guest here this evening, Phillip Menzies. Phillip has been our head composer for the SilmFilm project. He's been doing wonderful work for the score for the SilmFilm project for many years now. And tonight is going to be one of our special sessions that we do sort of in the middle of the season, where we're going to, because we're still fairly early on. We just did, it was 3, right? We just did episode 3 last time, right? So we've discussed our way through 3 episodes of our 13 episode season. But now we're going to take a break tonight from the discussion of the episodes, and we're going to talk about the score. So we're going to do 2 separate sessions on the score during season 6. The second one, of course, is when we get to hear all of the wonderful compositions and performances and things that are going to go to make up, and Phil's going to walk us through the score, and we're going to be hearing lots of music and stuff like that. Tonight is the session where we kind of talk through what needs to happen, right? This is kind of our brainstorming session, and we're going to be looking at commissions that we have for him, things that have already come up during our discussions where we're like, okay, we're going to need some new themes for this. We really want to, and places in the story that we've already identified where the interaction of the music with the story is going to be really essential. So we'll talk about some of those with Phillip and think about what are some of the ways in which we might approach this musically. What are some of the kind of factors and elements involved there? So that's going to be a really fun session. And of course, as an extra bonus, apology, we're also joined by my puppy Pixie, who insists on sitting on my lap. So I apologize and hope she won't be too disruptive. Anyway, we also have another sort of special bonus here this evening, which is that Phillip is going to also give us a little bit of a walkthrough. Very recently, of course, the score for season 1 of the Rings of Power show has dropped, composed by Bear McCreary with some Howard Shore in there as well. And Phillip is going to do a little bit of a breakdown of the Rings of Power score as well, to kind of help us understand what's going on and what we're listening to in the score, and see what his analysis of the score can tell us. So I'm going to be really excited to start with that. First, just a few quick announcements. We want to talk about. Hang on. There we go. There's the announcements. I want to talk about our upcoming moots. We are beginning to approach Mountain Moot, which is on September 24th in just a few weeks in Denver, Colorado. So there's still lots of time to sign up for that. Well, okay, not lots of time. Decreasing amounts of time. Of course, that's true of all of them technically, but that one is coming up fairly soon in Denver. So looking forward to that. And then Middle Moot and New England Moot, both in October, on the 8th and 15th. Of October in Kansas City and here in Derry, New Hampshire, respectively. Then SoCal Moot, November 5th in Carlsbad, California. By the way, New England Moot, October 15th, of course, turns out to be also the weekend right after the finale of the Rings of Power Season 1 is going to be dropping. So we're also looking to be connecting like a finale launch party and some stuff like that attached to the moot as well, which should be fun. And then, of course, Phillip, January 27th to 29th, down in your part of the globe, finally, in Australia. Yes. Tell me how you pronounce the name of that city.
Brisbane.
There we go.
Yep, that's right. There's no Bane. There's no Bane that we have to worry about.
That's good.
Brisbane.
That's much friendlier for sure, right? Yeah. There we go. So down in Brisbane, Australia, on January 27th to 29th, Osmoot, my first ever trip to Australia. I can't wait. It's going to be great fun going down there and connecting with folks down there. So,
looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Yep, I've already registered. Got my paper registered as well.
Fantastic. So you're gonna give a presentation there too?
Yeah,
good,
that's right.
Good. I'm so glad
to walk through the first part of the anal interlay.
Nice. Oh, that's excellent. Looking forward to that. Okay. And also, of course, yes, my new book is coming and here and not here at the same time. Of course, I'm publishing my book progressively. So if you go to signumuniversity.org/press right now, you can find the link where you can pre-order my book. And when you pre-order it, then you'll be signed up to be getting the chapters as I drop them. And we can... so that's going to be that whole process is going to be a lot of fun. We're just sort of starting that up, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So anyway, yes, and Alana, who's hosting Osmoot, is here with us this evening. Alana is on the SilmFilm team as well, so it's going to be some fun SilmFilm times down there in Brisbane in January. So all right, now, so Phil, tell us some of your observations from the Rings of Power music.
So I suppose it's first started with the trailers when the trailers dropped. That was the first music that we got. Some of the trailer music I felt was just generic trailer music, particularly the one with the meteor streaking across the sky. Had a lot of synthesizers in it, and I thought that's just not going to appear in the show at all.
Right.
The very first trailer that dropped, I thought it was a very good choice of having the first two notes being, which is the significant beginning of the ring theme. So Rings of Power, that semitone rise was a sure indication that this is what we were going to see. The other things, I respond to what I hear very quickly. And so when things sound familiar to me musically, I link it to something that I know immediately. Yeah. So that was why that semitone rise hit me for the very first opening notes there. The next thing that hit me was, of course, the trailer that begins with the familiar Lord of the Rings music and shows the scene of Valinor and the trees, and of course the familiar view of Galadriel's eyes only that we had seen in the trilogy, and so the music we got was familiar Lord of the Rings music, but actually Rivendell music. Oh. That was actually a surprise to me. The ba da 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 da.
Yes.
That is Rivendell.
And that's the starting point of the Harfoot This Wandering Day song?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I have a feeling that's where the Wandering Day song came from.
Really?
It just fits in so well. I can't quite get the note in my head at this moment, but I'm
not gonna. Yeah, I'm not gonna, slight you for not being able to play on the piano by ear the song you've just heard on the soundtrack a few times.
I'm not that kind of piano player either. I need music in front of me, so I can sit down and nut it out and write it out in music, and I can play it fine. But yes, the Wandering Day, that da 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 is the coming down bit of the da 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 da.
That's really interesting.
I'm finding this a lot with TV music at the moment, that they're taking little grabs of familiar themes and working it into its own theme.
Yeah.
And I feel that's it sounds like that's where this Wandering Day came from. But of course, when you get this Wandering Day in the soundtrack, it's in a major key and it's much brighter. Like in this trailer, it's in a minor key, so it has a darker feel to it. But the trailer is a much more lighter. So the track, this Wandering Day, is much lighter, being in a major key. I just had a question though, when why choose the Rivendell music? Because we're not going to get Rivendell. It could be a case of this is just a piece of music that resonates with the audience in a significant way. And as soon as everyone heard that, they said, "Oh, I know that music," but not necessarily registering that it is associated with Rivendell. It's also interested that motif, that da 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 da, is actually listed by Howard Shore as indicating weakness and redemption.
Interesting.
And indicating that that's the end of the elves' time in Middle Earth.
Right. Doubly interesting that would be associated then with the Harfoots. So, okay. So, of course, I saw the first 2 episodes in New York 2 days ago. And I'm going to try not to do this too often during the show, to do the, that makes me think of something, but I can't tell you what it is thing, which I'm trying to be good. I'm really trying to be good. But I'll just say this, Phil. There were several times in the first 2 episodes where there were, and I'm sure there were more than I noticed, but just like on a first viewing, there were several places in the first 2 episodes where they were clearly making overt references to the Jackson films. I mean, of course, they're dealing with Tolkien stuff all the way through, but there were also several times when they were really placing themselves in relationship with the Lord of the Rings film, including one place where there's actually like a line quoted out of context in a way that I found really funny. But anyway, so like there are several points, like 2 or 3 places in particular where it was like just jumping out at you if you knew the original films at all. And so, Phil, what I'm going to be interested in, but of course, like, I don't know, I neither know the Howard Shore score like you do, nor am I so attuned to the music. I have to confess that although, I mean, obviously the music affects me a lot, right? I mean, I know that I am moved by the music in lots of ways, but I don't consciously pay attention to it. Usually it's going to be like the 3rd or 4th thing normally that I'm paying attention to myself. So therefore, in other words, I am putty in the hands of the composer because I am just being like, manipulated in all these ways that I'm totally unaware of, right? By the score. But anyway, so my point is, what I'll be really interested to see is if you feel that if you hear references to the like some of these references that you're hearing, how you see that interacting with what's actually going on in the show, and places where the show is making links back or even kind of separating itself from the other in different ways. I'll be really interested to hear to kind of come back to that after you've seen it. And we should do a you know what we should do, Philip? What we should do is that Maggie and I should have you on Other Minds and Hands, and we should do when the season's over, right? So that when we've all seen the whole thing, and do a kind of a score breakdown from that point of view, right? Now that once we've seen it, that'd be really fun. But anyway, yeah. So there's a bunch of there's a bunch of connections. So in one way, it doesn't surprise me that not only are they making references, but that they're doing it. Like, for instance, I wouldn't expect, and I think I would have noticed, maybe even I would have noticed, if they had done like a musical reference to the like Concerning Hobbits theme, right? Like when we're seeing the Harfoot village and everything. So in some ways, it doesn't surprise me that that there's a reference, and B, that the reference seems in some way kind of like mishmashed. Right. And I suspect that there's some. I suspect that they're being clever there, but in ways that, again, I haven't yet really been equipped to notice yet. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
But anyway, cool. So anyway, but sorry, keep going. You were also saying something about the Lothlorien theme that you were noticing.
Yes. So in the trailer, which has the elf children running beside the stream.
Yes.
The music comes in and it's a female voice singing, and they sing this note, and that note is that note being sung by a female choir is the very first note in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. because the opening titles begin with the Lothlorien theme. So I can actually understand how they've linked, and that actually morphs into what I now know as Galadriel's theme. At the moment, I didn't know that was Galadriel's theme. And I think they use that note on purpose to make that link, because you would expect it to go. That is how it starts. So when you hear that note, you're expecting that that to follow, but instead we get, which is the beginning of Galadriel's. And we've got the same. We've got one sort of element, a little piece of music there. Which sort of has a similar form and ends on the same note as the Lothlorien theme. So I think I can see how the composer Bear McCreary has sort of said, okay, let's backward engineer the Lothlorien theme, which you associate with Galadriel, and this is how it might have been for her when she was a different person. And right. So, but there are some similarities there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The interesting thing is Galadriel's theme just goes. In the trailer, they chose to start it with. So they added that note in the beginning, and I think that was purely to get us focused on, hey, that's a familiar Lord of the Rings sound.
Connected to the opening Lothlorien theme, and yeah, fascinating.
And with with Galadriel as well.
And so so many things I want to say in response to that and should not. But so, yes, let me just say, I think you're onto something there, Philip. I think there's definitely some substance behind that. And I will salve my impatience by saying a cryptic thing to you, Marie. We saw the children running along that stream in a trailer. Did you notice the hair color of one or two of those children? Just saying. But okay, anyway, moving on from talking about things I'm not supposed to talk about.
Anyway, So that were just the things that hit me as being familiar, and linked me back immediately to what had previously been done by Howard Shore. Yeah. In going back to the trailers after the soundtrack was released, I can tell that a lot of the music in the trailers are from the soundtrack itself. So once again, it takes you. I'm really very suspicious when I hear generic trailer music, it doesn't really gel for me. I want trailers to give me a musical glimpse of the show as well.
Yeah.
No, look, but that's fantastic. They've done a lot of good work in putting those trailers together musically. I felt
good.
So that was just my opening observations of the trailers. Of course, the soundtrack was released last weekend, so I've had it on pretty much non-stop. Listening to it in that time, we got the first glimpse of that at Comic-Con. Of course, I wasn't at Comic-Con, but I did manage to see a video of Bear McCreary. The live performance, which was really good. So that live performance featured Galadriel's theme, and in the interview afterwards with him, the first thing he said was about the relationship of his score with what Howard Shore had done previously. And I must say, that's a SilmFilm first. We're going to have a few SilmFilm firsts today, musically. That's what I said right in the beginning. And any continuation of Tolkien's stories in adaptation really needed to continue the work that Howard Shore had begun.
Yeah, to really relate to that. I mean, it's interesting because, of course, a lot of people, as you know, Philip, you're in the, you are in a wonderful minority, right? So many people are much more focused on the visuals and not paying so close attention to the music, and so a lot of people have been really glad, like, I'm really glad John Howe is working on this project, as it it sort of really helps with the visual consistency and everything, and that it's still going to be feel in some ways rooted to the the sort of the aesthetic that we're familiar with. But I think you're right. At least as important as that is the connection, and the fact that Bear McCreary, so it was great to have John Howe. So like John Howe himself is like the living continuity, right, between this project and the other project. And I thought it was funny before they announced that John Howe was involved, and people were like, the art just looks like it's ripping off John Howe. We're like, yeah, well, they're not wrong. But anyway, but I agree that so it's really interesting to see, but they brought in a new composer. I mean, Howard Shore was involved some, but they brought in a new composer. And really interesting to see that, Philip, as you said, like he does share your convictions that, and let me just say, I think there are several places where we can see the Rings of Power show following the wisdom that we have laid down before them here at SilmFilm. It's all been worth it, that we could,
it has.
we can pave the way for those who come after here, blaze the trail. All right, but you were wanting to mention, and this is of course awesome for folks just in that part of the world. You recognize one of their locations.
Yeah. Now, in an earlier podcast, I can't remember which one it was, you said that you didn't have much idea of the Halfwood story because you didn't know where in Middle Earth it was actually taking place. And so when I saw this trailer and it ended, this is the Wandering Day trailer, and it ends with the Halfwoods walking down this grassy slope. I looked at that and said, I recognize this place because I've actually been there in the north, been to this location in the North Island in New Zealand. And it's a place called Denise Bluffs in the Waitomo area, which is on the west, on the western coast. And it's all limestone. It's all limestone, and they've chosen it because of these really spectacular limestone cliffs there. So when you go to New Zealand, if you book in for a holiday and say, look, I want to do a Lord of the Rings stuff, they'll book you into Hobbiton at Matamata. They'll book you into a Rings tour in Wellington because there are numerous filming locations in the Wellington area. But other than that, it's like the travel industry is not hooked in with what's there. So there's a whole lot of stuff. I went and found a whole lot of filming locations on my own, which are just on public land. You can just view them. But this one, as I said, was already a filming location. And I'm interested to know whether any of the viewers can actually recognize which part of the previous movies had this as the filming location. But after it was a filming location, the owners of the property made it into a tourist attraction. So they hold tours. It was really friendly, just a husband and wife, and they run tours around and take you to all the significant filming locations. And it got to end. I don't know if you've gone on to the next slide, which actually reveals where it was.
Yes.
But a place called Hairy Feet Waitomo is what they've called themselves. So, and you can see from the photos, does anyone recognize which movie and which location this was?
One on the bottom left, it looks like Fellowship of the Ring. Is that where they hid? Is that where they hid from the Nazgul under the bank? No, it looks. No, that's like that. No.
They a little bit. That's in Wellington in Victoria Park.
Okay.
No, this was a Hobbit movie location. All these photos are in this one location, and the one on the bottom right, I think, is a dead giveaway because you can get that. I'm doing the same thing as Bilbo here, from exactly the same camera angle.
Right.
It's the Troll Shores.
Right.
to where they filmed the Troll Shores. So those bluffs were where the ruined farmhouse was. That then the trolls had eaten the farmer, and the one on the bottom left is where the wargs attacked them and Radagast. So you have the opening of the cave, the opening of the trolls' cave, and the attack by the wargs in that bit of the forest is all there. So look, yeah, from my own experience, they're filming where the Troll Shores was filmed in An Unexpected Journey. It's not a guarantee, but it may be an indication that this is roughly where in Middle Earth the Half-Foot story is taking place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Anyway, so that was just an aside.
Interesting. Okay, so you were looking at the soundtrack.
That's
I've got
right.
the soundtrack slide here. So what were some of the things you're saying? There were some direct outtake ones and individual tracks and things. So what were the things that you were noticing here?
So this is another SilmFilm first. Okay, and just by looking at it, they've done exactly what I've done with the music. So if you're having a look at the track list and you want to know what's the best thing for me to listen to so that I can get a feel of what a particular person's theme sounds like, well, the really simple thing is if it starts with a name of a person or a place, then that track is a clear statement of that person or that place's theme.
Right.
So Galadriel, Khazad-dûm, Nori Brandyfoot, The Stranger, Numenor, Sauron, Valinor. They're all very clear, self-contained statements of the theme. And in an interview, Bear McCreary said that he generally did a main theme, a sort of a bridge section. It also had an introduction, and it also had sort of an ending. And I've said to you before, as a little self-contained piece of music, it has to have all of these things. It has to have an introduction, has to state the theme clearly, some variations, and then it has to have a closing. So yeah, if you go through them, Elrond the Half-Elven, Durin the Fourth, Half-Foot Life, Bronwyn and Arondir, Halbrand, then you skip down to Elendil and Isildur. Mm-hmm. They're the main 13 themes, and they're all very strong melodies.
Right.
So that's another way that Bear has emulated Howard Shore by using strong melodies, not like Hans Zimmer, who is really good at giving you the feel and the feel of a situation. But these are all really strong, recognizable memories. So if you spend your time listening to those ones, when you're actually watching the show, and so when you're watching the show, you'll hear, oh, there's a snippet of that person's theme. There's a snippet of another theme as they run together. Yep. So the ones in the sort of greenish color appear to be the tracks that are direct outtakes from the show.
Right.
So I got down to Valinor and I said, yep, that's a beautiful theme for it. And by the way, Valinor in tone sounds very similar to one of my elf themes. Sorry, I've forgotten the name of the elves, the Noldor, the Teleri, and the
Vanya. Yeah,
Vanya. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. Very similar in tone to the Vanya. Very choral based, beautiful harmonies, very nice and slow. And then
so it seems that it's not only Howard Shore's score that this soundtrack is rooted in. I'm just saying that, and of course I'm just teasing everybody. I'm not actually saying they're stealing from us. I'm not saying. I'm just saying, right, that there are some similarities here. No, I mean, honestly, what it does, like, again, nowhere do I actually accuse them of actually copying from us. What it does show, what I do find fascinating are the ways, I mean, I'm assuming that both Bear McCreary and Phillip, as well as like the showrunners and us, are doing totally independent thinking. But that's what makes similarities among them the more interesting, right? It really kind of shows to me Yeah, exactly. It's convergent evolution, as Druid's Fire says.
That's
it
right.
really shows to me that we're doing very similar thinking, and I'm fascinated to see ways where that's connected. Interesting that it's the Vanyar in particular, right, who are like the most Valinorian of all of the Calaquendi, right, in a sense.
That's right.
So yeah.
That's right. So yeah, all the ones in green basically appear to be outtakes from episodes. So, for instance, the boat does not get its own theme. I can tell you that straight away. The boat does not get its own theme. That's a combination of other themes, and it tells you something very interesting about what happens in that scene by linking the different themes together. So then you get down to the number 21, 22, 23, and 24. These are the vocal tracks, which are all quite impressive. Noel Wamata was the one that led the Comic-Con presentation. The one that goes, sorry, what it was? It was, no, sorry, I missed it. I had it before. Sorry, I've lost it. I haven't by ear. The da 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 da. Anyway, that's the one that led that. Nampat is a very orcish tune, so obviously that's with the followers of Sauron. The Plead of the Rocks features Sophia Nombete, who plays Princess Dissa, and of course this Wandering Day vocals by Megan Richards, who plays Poppy Proudfellow. So they're all songs. There's a lot of vocal work in all of the tracks, but these I felt were featured songs. And yeah, pretty much all the rest, apart from the two Amazon Music exclusives. I don't know why. I don't know what's so special about those tracks for them to hold them back so that you can only hear them if you subscribe to Amazon. But pretty much all the rest are, you can hear those other themes, the first themes listed there. You can hear those themes during those tracks, and there's some quite interesting things to pick up in there.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So I could tell you a little bit about Galadriel's trajectory through the boat and the Sundering Seas because of the themes that are played within there.
Do you want to play hot?
Sorry,
cold. Do you want to play hot and cold with this? But Keep going. You're doing great.
Yep. I don't know what was revealed in episodes 1 and 2, but just to give, and with the visuals that I've seen, the boat theme starts with the Valinor theme.
That's interesting that you should say that.
That's right. So
that would be a fascinating observation. Yes.
For someone who hasn't seen the first 2 episodes. Yeah. So look, but I'm really interested with sort of how it develops. Obviously, once this further into the series, there's a lot of amalgamations of the Numenor theme and of Galadriel's theme. Quite often they run one into the other, such as this is Numenor's theme. And then it'll go straight into, which is Galadriel's theme. So it really shows the amalgamation of Galadriel with Numenor working together throughout the series. The one that I sort of am really fascinated by is the very final track, Where the Shadows Lie. So the title of that obviously just brings up, Mordor. That's where the shadows lie. Mordor is where the shadows lie. If you listen very closely, you will hear that it's actually made up of Nori Brandyfoot's theme, played in a really, really dark way.
You're kidding me.
I'm not. It is
so,
Nori.
So I'm just
Nori.
saying, so far, not a lot of people have Nori Brandyfoot in the Who is Sauron pool. I'm just saying, that's a dark horse at this stage. That's fascinating. That's fascinating.
It is very fascinating, and it didn't hit me. And this is how music works for me. And I encourage people to do this. That's why I say listen to those tracks where it's just the name of the thing, so that you get to recognize that theme. And it was only because I was familiar with Nori Brandyfoot's theme that when I got to that final track, and this wasn't the first time I listened to it. This was after I'd listened to it quite a few times. So like, oh my God, that's Nori Brandyfoot's theme. Why, and that's the main theme in Where the Shadows Lie. So she's going into a very dark place at the end of season 1.
And we know, I mean, and here I'm speaking from the trailers here, right? And from the trailers, we've seen plenty to show that Mordor and the rise of Mordor is going to be, the establishment of Mordor is going to be one of the themes of season 1, right? I mean, we've seen that in the maps that they've shown and some of the stuff that they've revealed. So that Mordor, that again, that we're getting a Where the Shadows Lie thing. I have been, and I will say, by the way, after watching the first 2 episodes, I still don't know where it's headed. The Harfoot storyline, right? I mean, I don't really know. The soundtrack's going to tell us a lot more than we can guess from by the end of the second episode as to where that's headed. But yeah, that sounds really interesting. Okay, so that's very cool.
It is. So the last little Easter egg that I have gleaned from the whole thing is musically, to me, there is an indication of who the Dark Lord is.
Okay.
There is, and this is related to the very first trailer that was released. And of course, you wouldn't know that until the soundtrack was released, because all of the themes are clearly stated in the soundtrack.
And labeled. Yes.
And labeled. Yeah. Exactly. So if you go back and watch that first trailer with the wood and the molten metal being poured into the cast to form that. Yeah. As I said, it starts with that semitone rise to indicate we're talking about rings, we're talking about the One Ring. Yeah. The music at and while they're quoting the ring verse, the music is just sort of going backwards and forwards between 2 chords. Bum, 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 bum. One of the themes kicks in as soon as we hear the lines, "One for the Dark Lord on his dark throne." One of these themes kicks in at that point of the ring verse. I believe that would be fairly significant. And once again, it's played in a very different way to what it's played in the soundtrack list. And that's the Strangers theme.
The Strangers theme.
The Strangers theme kicks in. As soon as we get the line, one for the Dark Lord on his dark throne.
So what will be most interesting to see about this, Philip, is whether or not they're actually because I believe they've been doing a very great deal of deliberate misdirection through the trailers. Yes. Right?
Yes.
And so I'll be really interested to see if they're actually thinking through so far as musical misdirections in this way. Because you're right, exactly. That sounds like an obvious setup, right?
It does.
But I wonder. I mean, I'm still going to be surprised if the stranger ends up being Sauron. I really am. But
I have a saying that the music never lies. For those people who are familiar with Star Wars, and most of us are familiar with Star Wars, I'm sorry if you haven't watched The Rise of Skywalker, then block your ears now for spoilers. But hidden within Rey's musical theme is the Emperor's theme.
Right.
So and
the only thing I would say though is that it is possible that the music could lie in trailers. Right?
It is possible. Yes.
I do agree. Yeah, I'm sure that you're right. As far as in the show itself, that's why I'm going to be so interested to see what you think when you're here, especially now that you know this score really well, when you see the show and you see it's going to be really interesting to think more about that and talk about that then. Awesome. We should move forward to musical commissions, both because we really need to talk about this and also so that I can stop getting myself into trouble. So, because it's one thing to refrain from doing analysis. It's another thing to be involved in an analytical discussion with another person and still abstain from doing analysis. But anyway, no, that's awesome. Okay. So our first round here of musical commissions. We had an episode where a session where we were talking about magic and how we portray magic. And one of the things we all agreed on is the music is going to be critical, right? And not only in some obvious cases, that's clear, right? Like when people are singing and magic is happening like that. Okay, yeah, guess what? The music matters, but not just that. There are going to be lots of times when, because of course, one of the major issues we were working through is that so often magic in Tolkien is not visible, right? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have a visual effect. It's like the assertion of will over the primary world in various ways, right, is kind of what magic is. And that clearly music is one of the ways in which we can convey to people, okay, magic is happening here, right? So different so we want to think about sort of instrumentation for that, good and evil, because we're going to have both good and evil magic happening, mostly good because of course we're focused on Beren and Luthien themselves, but obviously we're going to get the clearly, well, I say no, it's not clear at all. Clearly the second most important musical moment of this whole season, I think, is going to be, well, gosh, there are so many now that I'm thinking it through. It's hard to rate them, isn't it?
I know. But I just sort of want to talk generally about it, rather.
Let's talk generally
we'll
first.
Get to the moments. We'll get to the moments. Yeah. So look, the only time that I can think of in the Peter Jackson movies where the music indicated that magic was happening was when there was light pouring out of Gandalf's staff.
Right.
Had the High Boys Choir with that vocalization. That's really the only time that I can think that they were really overt with showing magic in the score.
Right. No, I'm thinking especially the like the Gandalf shining the light up with the chasing the Nazgul away when Faramir's returning is one that really, really jumps out as an illustration.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. I mean, even when he broke the bridge of Khazad-dûm, there was nothing in the music to indicate that he was exerting power at that point.
Right. Interesting.
So yeah, instrumentation can be used. I have associated certain instruments with certain themes before, so I think that is a good thing, a good way to do it. Tubular bells is always going to be with doom. Flutes is always going to be associated with Manwë. Yep.
I love that sentence. Like that's just an awesome sentence. Tubular bells are always going to be associated with doom. Like that's kind of seems like it should be on a T-shirt. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Flutes associated with Manwë, glockenspiel associated with Varda. So whenever you come across those elements, those instruments will come to the fore. But there's been nothing specifically. The only sort of ethereal magical thing that I've done was for the Silmarils themselves, and that was a very sort of, I think I put lots of echo and reverb into that, as if the light sort of bouncing around inside of the gems to get across that particular idea. But obviously that shows that there is some kind of magic associated with the Silmarils, and there is. So yeah, apart from, I mean, I could hire a boys' choir if we needed to.
No, fortunately, SilmFilm has an unlimited budget, so that's right. That's right. We're not like those poor cash-strapped Prime Video productions. We can spend anything we want.
Yeah. I haven't got any definite ideas at this time about instrumentation, and how to portray that magic. Most of the magic is going to happen directly with the characters.
Right.
I mean, I have dabbled with modes in the last season.
Right. Right.
I'm not entirely certain that they will be enough to convey. They convey a mood,
Yes.
rather, like
Yes.
modes of moods, rather than an actual thing happening. I mean, in terms of instrumentation, I mean, I'm for the 1960s. I mean, the go-to instrument whenever something spooky or out of space was happening was, of course, the theremin. As soon as the theremin played, you knew that something weird and unexplained was happening.
Right.
Obviously,
Right.
we don't want to go down that track, but maybe that is the sort of thinking that needs to happen, to get a to choose a decisive instrument. I do know of a composer who is using the serpent. There's a composer who is using the serpent, in which is a medieval instrument, to great effect these days, and throat singing as well,
Right.
which
Right.
is not
right.
normal singing, throat singing. So to add very different feel to their soundtracks.
Yeah. 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 Cool. No, that's yeah. No, that's very interesting stuff. So talk about the different types of music that you're kind of thinking about here.
The music, it's sort of okay. The different. I just wanted to mention the language, because there was, to
Yeah.
me.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. When I composed, and got a good friend to sing the Girdle of Melian,
Yes. Yes.
which is and I specifically chose to use the Valinorian language.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't many words in that, so I did my best in putting it together, and Marie helped with assembling it as well. But my sort of feeling, and I don't know how you feel about this, was sort of it's sort of a Lewis type idea of, we have magic from the dawn of time and deeper magic from before the dawn of time. And so that to me resonates with the languages. Sort of the older the language, the more powerful magic there is associated with that language. And so Valinorian could very well be from before the dawn of Arda.
Right. And you there's a kind of a corollary to that in my mind would be that, like, an invented language would partake of the power of the inventor, right? And so it would be interesting to think of like the kind of parallel, right, between the Ring of Power and the Black Speech, right? The Black Speech being Sauron's invented language, and the ring, so like just as he's kind of poured himself into one, almost in a sense, right? He's kind of poured himself into the other as well. So I that would be another kind of interesting sort of way to think about language, and therefore being able to evoke it. And I mean, obviously that seems to be not borne out exactly, but that kind of parallel seems to be suggested in the ring, the ring incantation itself, especially its manifestation in Rivendell, and that sense of the power in the language. No one has ever dared to utter that tongue, which is clearly more than just a piece of rudeness, right? It's not. Their objections seem to be beyond mere aesthetics, right? To hearing the Black Speech in Rivendell. Anyway, I'm not trying to push that reading too far, but again, I think we can see a kind of parallel there, and it might be interesting to think about that, because of course there's another interesting parallel to that, and that is with the dwarves and Aule, right? As Khuzdul was Aule's invented language, right? So you have a kind of parallel there. They're not the same, right? Black Speech and Khuzdul are not the same, and the motivations for making them are not the same. But it's a parallel situation, right? Which could also be sort of interesting to explore. Anyway, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Where would you consider Quenya to be in that sort of spectrum?
Well,
Arome has a role in the invention of the early Elven languages.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fascinating how Tolkien kind of went back and forth on the cause and effect there, right? You know, in some places he's like, well, Quenya was based on Valian, right? Because like Orome spoke this language and taught his language to the Quenya, and then they changed it and, you know, played with it after that, and it became their own, and so therefore separated from Valian. But then later on, he's like, actually, no, Orome didn't have any language at all. They just spoke telepathically, the Valar did, and then the elves invented Quenya from scratch themselves, and Orome learned their language, and Valian is actually based on Quenya. So he kind of went back and forth and thinking about how those two things could have been connected, but basically in either case, Quenya was essentially connected to like the creative power of the elves themselves, right? But also, but unlike the sort of solitary invented languages, like one person coming up with the language, like Sauron coming up with the Black Speak, it's a communal language, right? It's like the language of so they invented it, or they developed it, one way or the other, right? In both cases, it still is tied to elf culture and elf community, right? That their language, they made that language into what. That's why Quenya and Sindarin separated, right? Not because, and again, this is something that seemed to be like a sort of a question which Tolkien was sort of addressing, sometimes implicitly and sometimes explicitly, right? Which is, we understand why language shifts among humans, right? Like over generations, you know, these trends continue, and then they don't even remember, you know, the children in the fifth generation have no idea how their, you know, great grandparents spoke, right? And so languages can change radically over time. And some would say, well, yeah, but okay, but if you have the one immortal person who's, you know, people keep their accents after moving to another country for a long time sometimes, right? So why should the elf languages change? Why should Quenya and Sindarin have drifted so far apart? Yeah, it was a long time, but it's the same folks, right? Wouldn't they remember how they spoke, and why should that happen? And Tolkien's sort of response to that kind of conceptual question about elvish languages was, no, they did it on purpose, right? This is like, it's because they were creative with, like, they love to tinker, like they made aesthetic changes on purpose and developed them in different directions, so that the difference between Quenya and Sindarin tells you something about how those cultures developed, you know, like, in the direction in which those cultures kind of went. In ways, and in some ways, my ear for language is even worse than my ear for music. So I don't. That is. I can't hear as much. Like, I feel like, you know, Tolkien's ear for language was just phenomenal, right? So like, doubtless that idea was really meaningful for him as far as his stories were concerned, right? Not only meaningful, but I bet he felt like he was revealing a lot, right? Like, oh man, now that I've told them that, it's a dead giveaway, right? You know, whereas I personally am like, okay, I mean, I love it as a concept, right? But it doesn't like help me understand the difference between, you know, like Sindar and Noldor culture just by listening to the qualities of their two languages, as I bet it did in Tolkien's mind, right? But anyway, go ahead.
I think what it's sort of leading to is, say Finrod, when he gets in a pinch, he's confronted with Sauron.
Yes,
he's not going to rely on Sindarin language. He's going to rely on Quenya. Like, he's going back to a deeper root of language which has that power. I don't consider Sindarin being a more modern language, a split off. In just the way that I've sort of put things together, I wouldn't consider Sindarin have a lot of innate power. Quenya would have greater power for conducting magic. Anyway, that's just how I sort of see it.
And the Noldor agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. The Noldor agree, right? And so say all of us say the Noldor. But no, I mean, especially, it's one way to represent the difference between the Calaquendi and the Morroquendi, right? I mean, we know that, like, the elves of the light who were in Valinor and saw the light of the trees have a kind of power in them, and a kind of power over, you know, the orcs and the creatures of darkness that the elves of the darkness don't have. And so that certainly would seem to it's not simplistic, right? But it would seem to correlate with the language thing there. I mean, again, you're absolutely right. You're Finrod and you're facing down Sauron. You are going to speak the language and therefore appeal to the entire like culture and atmosphere of Valinor itself, right? Where the language went after they were in Valinor, the language which still like retains the memories of the two, of their time in Valinor in the light of the trees, right? Like that's totally the language he's gonna be singing in for sure.
Yep. Okay. No, that's good. I put up there different types of music because I just wanted to sort of clearly state the different forms of music that we're dealing with within an adaptation. So obviously there's soundtrack music which appears in the background. You remember that famous line by when Sean Astin asked in Shelob's Lair, where does the light come from? And the director said the same place as the music.
right.
So yeah, it's there. It's in the background. We all hear it. It helps to set the mood and for us to understand what's happening. The diegetic music, I strayed into that area in last season with Harrod. We had a bit of music that was just in the marketplace. So diegetic music is the music that happens in a scene, like in Star Wars, the cantina scene. The band playing is diegetic music because everyone in that scene was listening to that.
So that's music really that cool. is actually happening within the frame of the show, right? Okay.
Yes, within the actual scene. So the music.
So we're going to be getting a bunch of diegetic music in season 6.
Well, yes and no, well, and that's why I put this last category, the songs of magic, because that's what the music is going to be. And the reason I wanted to talk specifically about this is because whenever I started to think about, this would work really well, it ends up in my head being like a Broadway musical. Right. And I thought, right. like big orchestra behind them. And I think this is going to be something different because, they're not going to arrive just in time with the Welsh Police and the Harry Orchestra, which allows such and such enough time to cross the Alps into Geneva. It's not going to be that situation. I don't think that orchestra is going to be suitable to back those songs of magic because it's just them and it's just there. This might sort of feed into the instrumentation. Maybe there needs to be some kind of instrumentation, maybe something quite low, which would add a bass note in which the vocals would come up above that, and possibly some percussion thrown into the mix as well. And discord as well, particularly when you've got the two warring, like Sauron and Finrod warring against each other. I think there has to be a significant amount of discord at a very, very low level. Obviously, they're going to be singing at each other, but I think in terms of instrumentation, it really has to be low down in the depths, or else very high. And I think that might be the way that we get across that this is magic happening.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, it really, thinking about back to the good and evil thing, right? I mean, they're going to be a whole bunch of times, especially obviously in episode 6, right? Or 7. Marie, is it 7? The Sauron conflict one?
6.
It is 6.
The duel. Yeah.
Okay, 6
and
is
then
the duel.
7 is when Luthien confronts.
Is when Luthien comes in. Okay, actually, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's actually the one that I was thinking of.
Okay, sorry.
Because
the Finrod duel is in 6.
The Finrod duel, right? But then we get the Luthien duel. But then not only the Luthien duel, we also have to have the. We're going to get to this, I think. The pot of evil thing, like the necromancy thing. And so there's going to be moments when we're going to be like really going back and forth, not just two characters going back and forth with each other, but even like the scene shifting. Anyway, yeah. So no, there's it is going to be an interesting challenge, and it's been, I don't know. I mean, I can't think of other times when we've had like good versus evil magic like directly in conflict with each other. Like it's just not a situation we've really dealt with before. So that's
and I think it'll be really sparse if we just rely on voices.
Yeah.
And with no accompaniment. There has to be something else there.
And that was your hesitation when I said we're going to be getting a lot of diegetic music, right? Because the voices may be diegetic music, but presumably there's going to be some accompaniment, which everyone on, in the frame is not hearing, right? Right.
Exactly. But it's sort of like, that's the feeling that's happening at that time, the music. And I think that has to be, this tells the audience that magic is taking place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yes, it's not something that they're hearing with their ears, but it's something that's a feeling. It's giving them goosebumps, their spines tingling, because the magic is being exchanged between the two antagonists.
Yeah, exactly. Jason, Luthien's assault on the tower, it's not a back and forth in the same way that Finrod and Sauron's thing is back and forth, but we definitely have a confrontation between Luthien and Sauron, so there's definitely going to be some give and take there, magically speaking. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So we might move on to actual
themes.
What musical themes do we need? And I'm happy for people to contribute and get some suggestions. This is by no means exhaustive.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm glad you had necromancy in the Pot of Evil, because that's what I was just thinking about. I mean, we clearly need. Now, are you thinking about anchoring the necromancy theme in Sauron's theme specifically, or?
No, I want Namo.
Namo. That's what I was going to ask. Or are you going to go with Mendos? Yeah. Okay.
I think with.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I think a bastardization of that. I don't know that it necessarily has to have Sauron's fingerprints on it, but I would base it in Namo's theme, just right from the get go.
I wonder if, I don't know if it might come. I wouldn't want to muddy the waters musically, so you would be a better judge than I as to whether or not this would work. But I'm thinking of a Thu the Necromancer theme, right? So if because I'm just thinking the identity of Sauron as the Necromancer is something that's going to kind of linger, or at least recur, right, over the course of his history. Even though you're right that necromancy. Again, my first thought was, does it have its root in the Sauron's theme? And you're right, that doesn't make sense, because it doesn't come from Sauron, right? It's a tool that's used by Sauron, and you could even argue potentially it's a thing that acts upon him also, right? That it changes him, perhaps. But nevertheless, the concept of Thu the Necromancer, right? He even kind of adopts a new name explicitly over the course of. Marie, can you believe? I've signed so many NDAs that just before I said that sentence, I actually mentally asked myself, wait, am I allowed to reveal that? Oh, wait, no, that was SilmFilm script. I'm allowed to talk about SilmFilm script. That's okay. I'm now inventing mental embargoes about talking about SilmFilm stuff. I cannot wait until this season of season 1 has dropped and I'm under no embargoes anymore. But anyways,
yeah. I think that would be that.
I think ridiculous.
That's definitely possible to out of starting with Namo.
Yeah.
Develop
necromancy.
Yeah, develop necromancy and Thu's theme will come
and
out
then
of that.
Sort of merge it. Yeah.
Yep. Come out of that. We'll definitely end up with a strong Thu theme.
Yeah.
Thu theme. Okay.
Thu theme. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is hard to say fast or frequently without sounding.
Okay. Which is why you named the track Thu the Necromancer. And avoid
That's right. Yes. And we can come back to that in future seasons if we just want to be reminded of his glory times as Thu the Necromancer.
Yes.
Even when he sets up in Dol Guldur, we could
absolutely
bring back.
That would exactly. Absolutely. And I can imagine that might come in handy in numerous other places. And of course, we should take a moment to think as we so like to do at SilmFilm, because at SilmFilm we're about nothing if not the long game, right? And that is, we've been talking about the Pot of Evil as sort of like the alpha trial of the kind of magic that is going to become the ring. You know, the ring. You know, it's the first attempt at what is eventually going to become the Ring of Power. And so therefore we must be mindful of the fact that the necromancy theme and the Thu theme are going to be a base from which the Ring of Power, the One Ring theme, is going to need to be connected later on, right?
Yes, sorry, my cat was distracting me, hopping into my microphone box.
Okay. We're all three of us dealing with pets this evening, so it's totally understandable.
Yeah, sorry. Could you repeat that?
Sorry, I was just saying that, of course, since we know the Pot of Evil is, we've been talking about the Pot of Evil as like his very first gesture at the kind of thing that's going to become the Ring of Power. The Thu theme and the necromancy theme are going to be. We need to be mindful of the fact that our eventual One Ring to rule them all theme is going to need to, you know, be connected, not like linearly necessarily, but or very simply, but so anyway, we just need to be playing the long game and be thinking in terms of, because obviously the One Ring theme is a thing we're going to want to make a lot of use of, you know, for a great deal of the storyline down the road. And so we want to make sure that we're cognizant of the direction we're headed here with the necromancy theme and the Thu theme, because it's going to end up being massively important.
Right. And I assume we are intending this to all grow into Howard Shore's theme, which makes use of the 4 notes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And,
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been holding off on that semitone rise. Been holding off on that, and I'll keep on holding off on that, because that to me is quintessential Ring.
Gotcha.
Sorry, Phil. One of the things I loved about talking with you, Philip, is just like the sentences. Like, I've been holding off on that semitone rise. Like, that semitone rise is special. And you're absolutely right. I just love it. I love all of the things that I learned from you. Okay, so I agree. The necromancy, that's huge. That's going to be a really important theme. Huan, yeah. It makes me ask myself the question: how have we not had a Huan theme? I mean, I know season 6 is, you know, his sort of spotlight season, obviously, but I can't believe we never had a Huan theme before.
Look.
Do you have any idea about, like, it's? I mean, it's. I imagine it's going to be related to the Orome theme, right?
Which I've yet to write. I've got some ideas for Orome, but
oh, right. I think we didn't have an Orome theme, because we had a bunch of the Valar, but we never got him. Okay.
Yep, there are still some gaps. So yeah, I'm still thinking about those. They are necessary. Of course, the Nauglamir, I think, will be important to have. Even things like, and there are other things that we've missed as well. The Ring of Barahir, Narsil, even Ringil. I would love all of those items to have their own little motif, and it doesn't have to be a full blown theme which goes for 30 seconds. It can just be a series of notes, which whenever they're played, we know that we're seeing this particular item. Bit disappointing that Narsil, that Anduril really only got an extension of the Rivendell theme in the movies. Right. That was a bit disappointing. I was expecting its own theme out of that.
Yeah, well, and of course we have an extra opportunity that Howard Shore did not have, right? Which is developing a Narsil theme, which can then alter into the Anduril theme, right, after the reforging. And of course, you know, obviously in the Lord of the Rings films, it's like Narsil, we barely knew ye, right? And then it's straight into Anduril after that. But yeah, so we will have more opportunities. So certainly I agree. Those certainly, I mean, Ringle's cool, but certainly again, long game, right? So Narsil and the Ring of Barahir.
Yep.
Speaking of long game stuff, Ringle is a sword that is reforged. So if you wanted, you could tie the Ringle theme to the Narsil theme, and this becomes the Enderal theme, if you wanted to.
Yeah. Or something for that reforging. But once again, that's an expression of magic. I suppose that's one way that we have been showing that expression of magic. And we've also got a poem that was written by Evan on the boards, and Dylan added to it, which is and it would just be in the background. It would be sung. So I thought I'd just add the poem there as the final version, and that would be something like Arwen's song that was played during the Houses of Healing. It would just be a song which is behind the action that is happening. And it's from the point of view of Finrod as well. So it might be sort of before he leaves Nargothrond, and sung in part of his considering whether he's going to assist Beren or not.
Right. So yeah. Okay. Hang on. So I find I'm still thinking about objects.
Yep.
We had an oath theme, didn't we? Have an oath theme?
Yes, we had the Oath of Feanor, and I had a little part of that which I wanted to specifically associate with oaths, so that the Oath of Feanor was very much centered on the Dies Irae, the ba da da da, but with an elvish slant. But there was one bit where the music goes bum 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 bum. And I felt that was in a way, it sort of can be, there's this, and the consequences. Right.
So the Ring of Barahir would be associated with oaths too, right?
Yes.
But very differently, right? And I would think, I mean, this is an oath that ties together elves and men, right? Not all elves and all men, right? But but it's going to be so, especially since, the Ring of Barahir, again, long game, right? The Ring of Barahir is going to be associated with Barahir and then Beren and Finrod, and then it's going to be associated with the line of the faithful in Numenor, right? And then it's going to be eventually, down to Aragorn who marries Arwen. So there's definitely a little like elves and humans coming together theme, right? Coming together, sticking together, getting hitched. Like there's lots of elf-human connections that are associated loosely, right, with the Ring of Barahir as it goes through. So that might be interesting to kind of see how some of those elements could be mixed in a Ring of Barahir motif. I agree, like, probably like full-blown, theme songs for all of those items might be too much, but anyway, but it's, the things that are going to be with us for like 15 more seasons, like probably bear thinking about, so that we can have some, especially since, I mean, we've already been talking about like how we how we're going to pass things down, and especially Narsil has been a challenge. So having a musical hook to hang things on may help us at some point in sort of conveying and communicating.
Have we actually shown anyone being killed by Narsil by touching it in an unauthorized way?
Oh, you mean like Aragorn threatens in?
Yeah. So to me, that is the magic in Narsil, and I think it'll be really important if you guys agree that that's one part of Narsil's magic.
Really interesting.
Because that to me is the only time where we're actually given anything concrete about the power inherent in the sword. So I'd love to see a scene where someone touches it unauthorized and bang, that's it. They're just
I wonder.
dead.
See, like I think I've always read that as being power inherent in Aragorn. As much as in the sword. I mean, he makes a big deal about the lineage of the sword at that moment, right?
Also, where did that sheath come from? Because that's from Lothlorien, right?
Yes. And I would also point out, who's he talking to, right? That is people who are terrified of Lothlorien and and elf magic and things like that, right? I think there's a chance he's bluffing, but I also think there's a chance that this is like an Isildur moment, right? I guess not a full like it's not a full Paths of the Dead generating moment right there, right? I mean, it's not an Oathbreaker thing where I'm like a whole people is going to be doomed to a ghostly existence. But does Aragorn have the power, the authority to lay a curse on somebody who takes the sword? Isildur had his curse packed quite a wallop, right? And even if Aragorn is very, even should Aragorn be judged to be a very junior varsity version of sorry, that's a very American metaphor, but to be a very a very, very minor version of Isildur. Nevertheless, like, the effect is minor compared to the cursing of one person compared to the cursing of a whole people. Anyway,
if the music's going to show a detail about an item and the magic that is inherent in that item, I think it will be important to define what the power of those items is.
I agree. And Jason has a great question. So sorry, the wine we're referring to is, yes, it's when he weighs at his side before Theoden's hall, and he says, "Death shall come to any who draws Isildur's sword apart from, or Elendil's sword apart from Elendil's heir." Right. So he's definitely laying down a curse right there. So the question is, again, where's the juice coming from? Right. Assuming, so there are three options, I guess, right? Option number one is he's bluffing. Right. Option number two is which is possible, but doesn't seem very like him. Option two is that the juice comes from the sword itself, like it's one of the qualities of the sword, Philip, as you're suggesting. And the third is that it comes from him, right? His curse upon it, or Maria's corollary of number two, that it might come from the scabbard also, right? So it could be tied up in the. The curse could be also a sort of side effect of the blessing laid upon the sword from its sheath. But
so we were hoping to make Narsil the Sword of the Faithful in Numenor, obviously. Sword
of the Faithful.
But in the first age, Narsil is specifically designed to fight Glaurung-ish. But it's the light of the sun and the moon, right?
Yeah, well, that's certainly what's associated. Yeah.
So it's meant to resist domination of will, the way the light resists the darkness, right? That's the inherent nature of Narsil. So the faithfulness is you can stay faithful because you're resisting any temptations to not be faithful, right?
It makes the light and darkness thing it's almost like it sort of symbolically demonstrating the faithfulness, right? As like it's like a metaphor for what the faithful themselves are doing in Numenor, essentially. Yeah.
So I think the theme, if there's going to be even if it's just like a few notes, but if there's going to be some kind of motif for Narsil, I think that concept of either faithfulness or resisting domination of will should be the heart of it. And that could tie into a curse of, if you shouldn't be touching this, it's not for you. Like, this is a very faithful sword. It likes its master, nobody else.
Right, exactly. The sword shall remain faithful too. Yes, yeah. No, I agree, Maria. I really like that as a way to conceptualize Narsil, especially if. So here we're doing all of this like pre-gaming for the Lord of the Rings season's score here this evening. But of course, with the resistance of domination, it would therefore seem really interesting if the Narsil motif and the One Ring motif, right, were kind of in opposition to each other in some way, right? Okay. So anyway, if you could convey all that in like a few notes, that'd be awesome, right?
Easy as. Yeah. Too easy.
Yeah, too easy. Okay. All right, too easy. Let's try something harder. Release from bondage. I saved that for last, because of course it's the major theme, and brings us. obvious. Okay, I should stop saying obviously, because I always get myself in trouble. But it would seem that the full expression of the Release from Bondage theme is Luthien's song before Namo, right? So, and we're gonna get appeals to the Release from Bondage theme in other places, right? We get lots of releases from lots of people, many escapes from jail, right, of one kind or another over the course of this season. Lots of opportunities to deploy the Release from Bondage theme, both in sort of obvious ways, right? Luthien getting out of Nargothrond, Luthien getting out the tree house, Baron being released from Tol and Garahoth, but also some less obvious ones, like Luthien's song before Morgoth, right? That puts him to sleep. Like that play when Luthien puts Karkaroth to sleep, right? At the beginning. Anyway, like that's there are lots of opportunities.
Yeah. I think it'll be possible to. Obviously, we will talk about that in a minute in more detail. But yeah, I think it'll be possible to weave that theme into the rest of the. Whenever we're talking about slavery and bondage and release, and we can just go back to that, or at least hint at it. And I think, but I just, obviously, yes, it will be very, very closely associated with what Luthien is doing throughout the whole season, and what she is singing.
Yes, and that's Luthien's songs are later. Okay, we'll come back to Luthien. No, let's do Luthien now, because we're thinking about that now.
Okay,
so let's think about Luthien's songs. So we have sort of a progression list here, right?
Go ahead. Yeah, I see it as being a progression, and that at everything that she sings before that is like she's going to add on. The first time she sings is to Hirulon. The next time she sings is to Huan. I mean, there's the hair growing in between, but that can be something quite different. She sings to Huan. Then she sings to bring down the tower. She sings before Morgoth. So it's sort of like she's building on what has happened before, and there's adding another layer of complexity and another layer of emotion as well, and emotional depth. And where I'm going with this is that, I think I have said this before, her song before Mandos is, in my eyes, the third theme for the Anal Interlay, because it is going to include the sorrow of the Eldar and the grief of men. And they're two themes that I've already written. Yeah. So this is how they're all coming together. But I wanted to have grief as underlying everything, because that is where she ends, but she goes through quite a journey to get there. I had conversation on the forums about this. I suppose musically, grief works really well. Grief is going to work well, and intense sorrow. We've already got Nienna's theme, which can be brought into this as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
And it's a really deep emotion. With Hirulon, I hope you guys haven't written the episode yet with Hirulon, but musically, I see it as being she's not presenting a logical argument to a tree, because it's a tree.
Right. Yes.
It's a tree. Like, you cannot logic with a tree.
Or certainly the logic of a tree would probably work differently from our logic. Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah. And so musically, I see that as being about emotion. And the emotion that she is feeling at this point is her grief at being separated from Baron.
Yeah.
So to me, that has to be the main driver at this opening point. And eventually we're also going to get to the point where when she does go to Mandos, to sing before Namo, she is essentially dying of grief. So we've got that whole concept of the elder being able to die of grief, of sorrow.
Right.
So I think it's important to get that concept happening like as early as possible. And to me, the danger with her being imprisoned by Hirulon is that she's going to die of grief.
Right.
And the tree can actually relate to that, because the tree understands about living and dying, and the thing that is going to cause Luthien to die is being imprisoned.
Right.
So the thing that Hirulon can do is to release her. So there was conversation about her being very passive. And I do agree that is something that needs to be worked out. But of course, she is very active in weaving her hair and growing her hair and weaving her hair. That's a very active time. But yeah, I see that as being really important for the music and the music building towards the climax of that song before Namo.
Yes, obviously we are definitely want to have Luthien's theme built over the course of the season. I do think we were hoping with Hirulon, though, that her song would appeal to a tree having to let the seeds go,
release the fruit,
that they can go out into the world and grow and be themselves. So it was more of a parent-child relationship that we were hoping to evoke there. But her grief at being separated from Baron is why she needs to go out into the world. So that can certainly be an element of it. And if we're anticipating the death from grief, we can anticipate it. Maybe.
What we could it sounds to me then, Marie, what you're suggesting is that the song to Hirulon and the growing and weaving song should be more intimately connected, right? That is, as an expression of growth and again, like the parental thing, right? Like it's the your kid is growing up, parent, you should let them go kind of root concept. Obviously that's not like a plot point at that moment, but that's kind of, it's like the atmosphere. Am I right, Marie, in what you're saying there?
Yes, I just didn't want to be focusing too much on death yet. It's a little premature in the story, but it's coming, so we can certainly anticipate it in certain ways.
Right. Yeah. I suppose I just feel that will the metaphor be lost on the tree? That's my question there, and really the tree to me sort of it's really much more baser feelings and emotions, and considering the trajectory of the music, that grief is going to be really important to show at this early stage. And possibly, I don't know, where is Luthien going to, like, as I said, effectively she will die, and that's how she goes to the halls of Mandos. So do we know where she is going to die? Like, because they do come back to Menegroth with his dead body, or does she, or does
details yet?
Because it would sort of be a good thing to actually show Hirulon has prevented her from dying by releasing her, and then the grief that Hirulon would experience when she dies on the doorstep of, like, right next to Hirulon. She did her utmost to prevent this from happening, and now it's happened right in front of her. So that's sort of how I see those connections. And if you needed to connect that grief, you can connect that at the end when she actually does die.
Sorry,
Anyway,
Marie, I think sorry, I didn't get that, Marie. You were adding something.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, we do have Luthien go on the hunt and be present when Baron dies, so her death will be sometime afterwards. And so if that happens at the base of Hirulon, it would refer back to the original story where Baron dies at the base of Hirulon.
I'm kind of liking the base of Hiralorn thing, right? I mean, I'm imagining like, you know, leaves falling from the, you know, the trees around her as she's lying, dying. I mean, that's, yeah. No, I love that link.
And the way the TV shows work, you could probably have him Dairon dying right there, like the hunt could bring them right back to the gates, and the action happens outside Menegroth, because you may not want to take the time to actually travel back from his place of death you know how we're like Bilbo only went down into the under the mountain once instead of 3 times. We sort of cut down on those actions because of the limitations of screen.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, I assume, you know, obviously when we get there, though, we'll work out the logistics of that. But the connection to Hiralorn, I think, is certainly a fun thing to maintain. We would get, as Jason suggests, bonus tragedy points in that situation. So I agree there. Okay. Cool. So how do you see... I was just suggesting a release from bondage connection with Luthien's song Before Melkor. How are you imagining that one, especially as a part of this progression?
Oh, if I knew what I was going to do, I probably would have written it by now.
I mean, I'm just kind of thinking conceptually. Yeah. So, like, conceptually, right? We've got...
I think at that point, obviously we need to Before Melkor, that needs to have a little bit of a seductive feel to it, because there is a sexual overtone.
I was gonna raise that.
I
wanted to bring that up.
I think I'm not going to go down the striptease road, but I think there needs to be something suggestive in there.
It's probably a good plan.
We're not going to suddenly go
right, exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah.
No.
Agreed. Yeah, we don't want to be looking for a pole there in Morgoth's Hall, but
no.
In the end, she is casting him. She's casting him into sleep. In the end, right? And so.
I think you made the point earlier in another episode about how in effect Morgoth was being released from his bondage for this brief period of time.
Yes.
So we're still talking about the same theme.
Yeah. I mean, there's I would be inclined to associate her casting him into sleep, not as her, like, you know, the dynamic there seems to be not she's like deadening his senses, or she's like like blinding him, or was, you know, like wrapping or whatever. It's more about like she's giving him rest. He does not rest, right? I mean, the fire of his anger and pride and resentment and hatred never rests and never lets him rest, right? So it really is what causes him to sleep. Because this is not, I mean, Morgoth doesn't take naps a whole lot, right? Like, this is not, I mean, this is, the fact that he goes to sleep is significant, right? It's not merely that, like, he is sleeping at a, for him, unusual time and place, right? Like this, I know I'm belaboring an obvious point, but again, the point is sleep is not something he ever does normally. And so she's not merely like singing him some kind of lullaby that makes him unusually sleepy, right? She's granting him rest of a kind that he never experiences elsewhere. And that seems to me to be a really crucial thing. I would see it having a reasonable tempo at the beginning to sort of catch his attention, and then it would be slowing down and sort of lulling him to sleep with that idea that you can rest, you can put your troubles aside for this short time. Yeah, yeah. Jason asks, it's an act of mercy in some sense. Yeah, I mean, I see it. She doesn't. I think of the spell she lays on Karkaroth, right? The "oh woe begotten spirit" moment, right? And there's an obvious element of pity for Karkaroth in that, right? And that she is granting him for a moment rest from his life, which is a horror to himself and others, right? And I do see what she does to Melkor as the same, a similar thing on a bigger scale, right? Or at the very least, that I think has to be a really crucial element there. Yeah.
The other element of it is that she is out of reach and unattainable to him.
Yes.
So I know we were joking about, it's not a striptease, but he can't touch her.
Right.
And that's the element we want to keep from that. If you're trying to get that tension in there, it's not that he notices that she's pretty. He's really not into humans or elves or, that. But he likes to possess things. He likes to possess beautiful things and light and things like this. And he can't have her. So that's...
Very good. I totally agree. And I would think of that more almost like a will-o'-the-wisp sort of situation, right? Like a light that you see that you go towards and never approach, or something that looks right at you but you can't grab, that's like right in front of you but you can't grab it. That kind of, fairy elusiveness, right, is, I think, a thing. There's an element, the fairy dancing element, this is a very Luthien thing, right? The Baron and Luthien story kind of begins with the mythic fairy tale template of the mortal who stumbles into an elf ring and sees elves dancing, and when clumsy, uninvited mortal stumbles into the glade or dashes into the glade, they vanish, right? Often with deleterious effects upon said mortal, right? So, I mean, that's the kind of root, in a sense, right, of the whole Baron and Luthien story, which is then premised upon the wholly unexpected and catastrophic ending of that, right, which is that she turns and puts her hand in his, unlike any fairy ever, right, pretty much, right, in those kinds of stories. That same element is there in the Morgoth dancing scene, right, where Morgoth is not a mortal, right, stumbling into a glade, and yet, Marie, just as you say, the same kind of inaccessibility, the same kind of distant and desirable beauty that you can't approach, right, or that you will destroy if you approach, or whatever, right, or it will destroy you if you approach it, right? I mean, that element, I think is there. I wonder, Phil. I wonder if it would be permissible to toy with, like, the Silmaril theme in conjunction with this. In that, like, because I agree with Marie, his desire towards her is not a aren't you a sexy female kind of desire. It's more like his desire for the Silmarils. And he has attained the Silmarils, right? Though they burned his hand, he can't. So he's going to be reaching, like, sort of metaphorically reaching out the hand burned with the Silmaril imprints burned in them, right, to try to reach, but he's not going to be able to reach her. And so again, there's sort of a parallel there between Morgoth and Baron seeing Luthien dancing and not being able initially to approach, right, and her running away and vanishing, and him chasing after her, trying to find her, right? I mean, there's a parallel there. Obviously, it's not the same, but there's a concept there. And yes, Jason is reminding us of Varda's light in season 1 that he wanted to hoard for himself. That's exactly the kind of desire that we're talking about here. I don't know that we would necessarily need to associate Luthien with Varda and Varda's light, particularly musically. That might confuse things perhaps a little musically, but that's why I was thinking about the. That's why I was thinking. about the Silmarils, right? It's rooting that. Not only are the Silmarils going to be making an appearance on screen, right, in that moment, but then also to have that, and that actually might be a really interesting way to work into it, right? To have a Silmaril theme appear, because the Silmarils are going to be literally flaring with light while Luthien is singing, but then also to be kind of weaving that Silmaril notion into Luthien's own, connecting with Luthien's own themes. Anyway, yeah. Yep. This is all very, very long-winded of saying what Marie said. I agree.
Yeah. I think, I was originally thinking that I'd do like one piece which did the whole continuum, but I'm just thinking that throne room scene is going to be so important that I might just do like an in the beginning track that Bear did, but this one will be in the throne room. It'll be the action that happens, and we'll hear the interweaving of those themes. And the Silmarils are there, Morgoth's there. He's got his own theme. There's really got to be an interplay between all of those themes. So that would be an interesting one to actually. This is how the scene would sound. I didn't think before. I'm guessing that Baron might need his own theme this season. He's such a principal character.
See, it would be almost interesting for Baron not to have his own theme.
Not to. Okay.
I wonder. I don't know. Marie, what do you think about that?
I think the most significant thing that Baron does this season is fall in love with Luthien. So if we are using a variation of the theme of elf mortal love that started with Andra, we could use that for Baron, or something of the House of Bayor theme. Like, I think we can use the established themes for Baron, and if there's something slightly unique about how it gets put together, that's cool. But
sure,
I don't think we know specific. This is Baron's theme.
Yep.
Because that's not how he works in a story.
Yeah, I mean, this comes
Luthien, who does everything.
Well, this comes back
again with Luthien. We're doing the Luthien theme,
the Wave of
Release from Bondage theme, and then letting Luthien play it out. So I kind of feel like Baron should get the Elf Mortal Love theme or the House of Bayor theme.
Right, exactly. Well, and it comes back, Marie, to what I was talking about last time about Baron's resume, right? Like that he doesn't actually do it. So there's not a, I don't see a like Baron enters the room and like Baron's theme plays like Princess Leia's theme, in Star Wars. He's not that. The ironic thing about Baron's character, he is this heroic figure who is the patient of action rather than the agent of action the majority of the time, right? I mean, it's just kind of how his story with Luthien works. That's why, Philip, I was thinking it might be cool for him not to have his own theme, because again, he doesn't. Again, and I'm not trying to. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm trying to diss Baron, but like he doesn't do all that much. I mean, and that I think it's interesting. I mean, it's even interesting just going back to the whole immortal elf, mortal stumbling into an elf clearing idea, right? I mean, he's, it's the elf turning and coming to him that matter. He's playing the role that any mortal would play in that situation, right? It's Luthien's turn to him that defines the story, right? Baron is not a very. It's not a very distinguishing element that Baron happened to fall in love with the most beautiful woman in the world. Like that would have happened to many mortals, perhaps most in his situation, right? Most mortal men in his situation would probably have fallen in love with her. It's the fact that she fell in love with him. So again, like that's in that sense, she's the. I don't know, important one, right? In that sense. I mean, it's a really blunt and crude way of saying it, but yeah. Anyway,
that's fine. And the good news at the end, the last one there, is that our vocalist Megan DiCenzo, who did the vocals for Luthien, is back on board. She's had a rough couple of years, but she's available now.
Good
to do vocals for Luthien again, which is
awesome.
Great.
I look forward to that. Very cool. Well, let me go back then, having done those. Wait, we do. Okay, great. So these are our last ones, right?
Yep.
Yes, last ones. Let's talk about Dairon briefly, because Dairon actually is relatively brief. we have we do have that one moment that we added, right? That song of intercession, and of course, fascinatingly, the meta composition, right? The composing of the overall frame. What are you thinking about for Dairon? How would you think about doing Dairon? Because it's I mean, Dairon is such an interesting character from a musical commission standpoint, right? On the one hand, looked at with your eyes closed, Dairon is a very, very minor character. And in any other season, a character who got as little screen time as Dairon does, we would never have thought of giving like a particular theme or a particularly characteristic musical feel, right? And yet, at the same time, we're talking about one of the three most famous musicians of all time, right? You know, the three greatest of all Elvish minstrels. So kind of seems like doing his music with care is kind of something we should do, right? So what are your general thoughts about Dairon? How do you handle, the great Elvish minstrel among the Sindar?
Yeah, doing him justice is not easy when he's up there so high. But look, I look at him as being fairly non-complex. He's got his own accompaniment, like he's got his lyre. I presume it's a lyre that he plays. So he's got his own backing. It's just him and his musical instrument.
I agree with you. He's totally a lyre guy, right? That makes sense to me. He plays the flute also, right?
I would say music of a pipe unseen. There has to be a pipe.
There has to be. There does have to be a pipe unseen.
So we can't sing and pipe at the same time.
It doesn't have to be.
No,
the Lay of Luthien. That could be a lyre.
That would be a lyre song. No, the piping is for her to dance to, right? So he doesn't have to be singing during that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So, but yeah, I seem to be fairly non-complex. One thing, what I will sort of need help with is the song of intercession, the words. If we have a source for that, if someone wants to contribute, that would be fantastic. Because I'm not a poet myself. Although I did write that Dairon song back in about season 3, Words of Mockery. But yeah, I surprised even myself.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely see if we can get some artistic help there with that song. That would be great. Cool. Now, I love your pointing out the disguise songs. I agree that's a really interesting sort of subgenre, right, of songs that we clearly get here, right? Do you see these as actual songs? I suppose that makes a lot of sense. Sung, like vocally sung songs, or
possibly chanting in. And this is where I brought in the languages question before. I would not assume that it's in the common speech, but it would be in Sindarin or Quenya.
Right.
And it may be that there are variations between Finrods and Luthiens and how they actually do it. I mean, the languages could be different. I mean, the language for Luthien is Sindarin. The language for Finrod is Quenya. So they could be very similar, but with different languages. They could also be very similar to her hair growing and weaving song, because these are very mechanical things that are happening at this moment. With the Wolfheim, something physical is being attached to Beren, so
you're
them in the same category as the weaving and hair growing song.
It's great, because you're absolutely right. The thinking back to our discussion of the songs of magic in general, those are some of the songs where there is a most clear and most simple, I am singing and by my song causing something to happen in the primary world, right? Like this. And so in that way, they are connected that way. That's cool. That's cool. Good. And then, of course, we have Finrod and Sauron song battle, which, of course, we know is one of the obvious musical set. There I am again with obvious, but one of the clearly important musical set pieces of the entire season. Finrod and Sauron, the song before Mandos, like that. That's those are the ones he had to come into season 6 anticipating, right, even before the first word was said. So yeah,
exactly, and very daunting. This one is very daunting. This is the one that I was thinking when I was trying to imagine how it would play out. It ended, as I said, it ended up going down the path of a Broadway musical, and I had visions of Javert and Jean Valjean singing at each other, which is really, like, I love that song. And I wanted to evoke something similar to that in the way that the one of them will come over the top of the other, but the other one will still be singing underneath. Yes, and then the other one will gain dominance and the other one will still continue to sing underneath. So something along those lines, but lacking that whole Broadway feel, because we're not bringing the orchestra in.
We wouldn't want exactly that. But no, I agree. That effect would be really, really cool. And
obviously the visuals, if I'm going to produce a video for this, the visuals are going to be important, and particularly when with the visions that each one is giving to the other, that is going to be important to show visually.
Absolutely.
So we may need some artwork along those lines.
For sure. Awesome. Well, very cool. There is so much fun stuff that is going to be happening here in season 6. Let's talk a little bit about the how you can be involved. There's Philip has been our core composer all the way through, but certainly we are always looking for folks to be involved. Philip, I know you are interested in other people potentially taking a crack at some of these themes and ideas, other composers.
Yep.
Of course, we always are interested in finding vocalists and instrumentalists. Some of the most wonderful musical outputs from SilmFilm have been those when we've had people coming in to perform and to sing together. Still just love the Oath of Fëanor song for this reason. It's so good. And artists, as you say, translators and artists. So translators to help us with lyrics in other languages. Artists, Philip puts together wonderful videos for the themes and songs that are composed for the season, and so folks who would be interested in having their visual art displayed with attribution in some of these videos, that's another way certainly that you can help out.
Yep, yeah. Vocalists that we'll need this season. As I said, I've already voiced Dairon. Megan has voiced Luthien, but we are going to need Sauron. We are going to need Finrod. And we're going to need vocalists for that poem that will be just a backing song in one of the scenes.
Yeah. Awesome. Very good. So yes, you can contact Philip through his YouTube channel. You can and his Twitter there. You can, of course, go to forums.signumuniversity.org and find the SilmFilm forums and get involved in some discussion of the music. There's a sub-forum for the music in Season 6, right? So you go to the SilmFilm forums, go to Season 6, and then go to the music section there.
Other way around.
Darn
music,
it.
Season 6.
SilmFilm music season 6. Sorry, got my hierarchy wrong there. Okay, very good.
Can I just say one final thing, that is, I think your Rings and Realms, you're gonna have to change your theme music, because your theme music you chose from the trailer. Howard Shore went and wrote the main theme. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we may have to consult with you on that. We'll see. There's definitely been some discussion, but I know that our selection from among the score for how we're deploying the music in Rings and Realms has certainly been less well informed and less scientific than yours. So we may have to bring you in as a music consultant here on the Rings and Realms score as well. In which case, you would get a credit on our show, which is a YouTube show, and so it doesn't really have credits. But that's exactly where, yeah.
And if Billy Boyd is listening, as he says he does, I've got 2 words to say: musical collaboration.
There you go. There you go. That would be good. We would always be welcome to have Billy Boyd sing on one of our soundtrack songs. I think that would be a wonderful addition. Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Awesome. Well, Phillip, thank you. One last thing that I want to say is thank you so much for this. This has been so much fun. I really, really appreciate your discussion of the Rings of Power soundtrack. That's been really, really helpful for me. And again, just this is an element of the music has been such a wonderful example of the way that the SilmFilm project has been enriched by contributors coming in and pitching in. You know, we used to, at the beginning of season 1, kind of joke about our score and our soundtrack, right? Until you jumped in and started making it happen. And the kinds of creative additions that has added. I mean, today's discussion is a really great illustration. Thinking through thinking about the music has really sort of forced me to think about the story in some ways that I would never have really thought about it before. So I'm so appreciative of the dimension that you add to this, as well as always so much enjoy the products of your work. So I look forward to our next conversation when we get to hear some of the results of this, and I encourage listeners who are interested in music or musicians themselves and might want to participate. You can get in contact with Phillip. We can if you are participating in the music, we can maybe bring you into the episode when we talk about them. We'll see what happens. It would be fun. So thanks very much for that. And we're
my pleasure as always.
Oh man, it is so wonderful, Phillip. So this next season is going to be a challenging one for Thursday evenings. Of course, our normal meeting time in real time, for those of you who are not listening asynchronously, are Thursday evenings at 10 p.m. And of course, we usually end at about, as it is right now, about 12:30 a.m., which is a half an hour after the episodes of The Rings of Power are going to be dropping on the East Coast for the next 7 weeks. So I'm going to be otherwise involved. It's complicated. The next episode we're going to be doing is going to be discussing the casting criteria. So going through the characters that we need in season 6 and discussing, and we'll be joined by Hakan. That's going to be at a special time. Anyway, we haven't set the time yet. So sometime in the month of September, probably in the latter half of the month of September, we're going to do the casting episode, and then we'll move on to discuss the next episode, right? We'll do episode 4. After that, correct. Probably in the middle, second, third week, or probably third week of October. We're thinking October 20th. October 20th, right.
After you're done doing Rings of Power stuff.
The first Thursday night on which there is not an episode of The Ring of Power dropping is when we plan to hold the discussion of episode 4. So that's what's going to be happening, right? So anyway, thanks everybody, and I look forward. So stay tuned. We'll be announcing on social media and stuff the date of the next SilmFilm episode, the casting episode, when we get that, or when we figure that out, I guess I should say. But I will. That's it. So thanks everybody for joining us, and I'll say as always, thanks for listening, and Godspeed.